Brad Faxon joins the program. It's great to see you, buddy. It's a high-wire act when you are one of the best players in the world like Rory. Everyone has an opinion, whether it's about his putting or his swing. You work in particular with Rory on his putting. What are you most proud of in Rory regaining #1 in the world?
There's so many things to be proud of, Damon. I think there's 2 J words that he used, that journey, and after he got off the course after his win, it was joy. You know, he's playing for the joy of the game as well. You know, when you went through his resume of all the things that he's done this year, you forgot the PGA Tour's policy board. And when you see the best players in the world want to, and I use the word sacrifice a little bit because it takes away from the selfishness that sometimes you have to be the best player in the world. But, you know, Rory's kind of partnered here with Tiger to help the PGA Tour in the direction they need to go to combat the live, you know, competition that they have. And I think that's given Rory an extra motivation. You talked about it with Greg Norman and those wins, but I think this has really been something that's helped Rory along the way, believe it or not. I mean, most of the top players were busy with their hobbies, whether it's Arnold Palmer flying airplanes or Jack Nicklaus traveling around the world to go fishing. I think Rory didn't want this, but he's handled it like a champion.
Speaking of this live and the advocacy that he's taken on for the PGA Tour, Brad, do you think it has been fuel or partially distraction or a little bit of both? He's obviously handled it in a fine manner, but is it a little bit of both fuel and distraction?
There's no doubt about it, Eamon. He's found ways. You both mentioned it with the Canadian Open and how that might be unlikely or maybe unreasonable to catch Greg Norman's 330-plus weeks. But he knows that Dustin Johnson's the next target for him to get ahead of on that pretty proud ranking. And you know, Rory's emotional. Getting #1 in the world, that's a big deal. And you can't hear many players say like he did that he wasn't used to being outside the top 10 a year ago before the CJ Cup. I mean, when you hear a lot of players that, you kind of roll your eyes, but not with Rory. You expect him to be there. He expects himself to be there, and he should be there.
Brad, you know what it's like to be in those policy board meetings as an 8-time winner on the PGA Tour in this era of fractured professional golf. What's your opinion on where we sit as a game today?
Well, what really drives me crazy is as a PGA Tour loyalist. I was a 3-time member of the PGA Tour's policy board, once on the Champions Tour too, so 4 times. I think golf was in such a great place before this came along. I mean, the popularity, I think COVID really helped people to participate. Viewership went up. The great players from all over the world, the depth of talent that we have from when Phil won, you know, the PGA at Kiowa at 51 down to the 20-year-olds from all over the world. I didn't think we needed this distraction. I hope, like the article that was in the paper today by you and Murray back over in the UK, Rory says, look, hopefully we can get this to come together at some point somehow. I think we're a long ways away from that with a lawsuit. Again, the CJ Cup had 15 of the top 20 players in the world rankings. And that's what makes the brand of the PGA Tour so good. You don't have to have the best player in the world necessarily every week there to make a compelling viewership.
Going back to Congaree and to Rory's success there, Brad, did you see anything out of Rory over the course of the weekend? Because I know you spend a lot of time watching, even if you're not necessarily talking to Rory every day, you spend a lot of time watching what he does. Did you see anything at Congaree that surprises you at this stage?
Well, a couple things. And first of all, I know you're an ambassador to Congaree, which is one of the great places, really. I mean, it's a fantastic golf course, but it's such a great place where you can go and congregate their mission there, what Friedkin has done. I went there last year with another ambassador, Jason Bale, who's one of my fellow instructors at Jupiter Hills. Wally Uline was on that trip, and I couldn't believe how great the place was. But when I saw that CJ Cup was going there and Rory hadn't played, I said, this is going to be a place Rory's going to like. There's firm and fast and pretty wide fairways. And there were a couple drives in particular Rory hit throughout the week where you don't see Rory swing off balance or swing as hard as he did in a couple of these tee shots. But on number 7 on Sunday, he hit just a drive and a wedge into almost a 500, maybe over 500-yard par 4. And then on the par 5, 13th holes, Friday and Saturday, hit drives 360 and 380 ripping that club back down off balance like he was in a long drive contest. You couple Rory with that fantastic length, great iron play, and some stellar putting, he's virtually unbeatable.
Brad, it's a great point you make. I watch Rory on the greens now. I almost expect him to make everything. And I've heard players talk about being less wooden, less robotic on the greens, being more athletic and natural. What has been the focus of your work with Rory on the greens?
Well, it's funny. We're getting close to 5 years having been together. We talk a lot about routine and having routine and not being stuck over the ball, really trusting your first commitment. And I think one of the people that Rory left off that list, that long list of his team, is Bob Rotella, who Rory spent some time with. And really, this guy is so physically talented. It's amazing. And just letting that potential come out. And Rory now, Damon, has played half of his life professionally, and he knows the record books. He knows how many wins he has. He knows how many Phil had at this age and how Phil didn't have any majors. I think for Rory that this is just the start. He said something remarkably earlier last year that when he started playing, he thought 40 was going to be old and the time where he might quit. And now he's saying 50 looks pretty young. Rory's been able to withstand injury in the gym. He mentioned Roe Sharma is an Englishman that lives over here that I introduced to Rory probably 3 years ago now, maybe longer, 4. That's his trainer. That they keep him strong. You saw that stat where his average ball speed's up 6 or 7 miles an hour in 2 years. At that age, that's fantastic. And I love Rory as a person. I think what he's how he stands out to the rest of the world. He's got the respect of his peers. Maybe not every peer that's playing over in Asia. In the Live Tour now, but I think he's a guy that if you can get him going, if you can get him carefree, and I think Michael Bannon, his longtime swing coach, they have 1 or 2 little things they work on. I've learned a lot from Michael. We've learned what Rory's kind of tendencies are on the putting green. They're just little reminders, little suggestions or conversations, like Eamon said. There's nothing really that's too detailed when he's going on the string like this. And he's so proud of, his putting numbers throughout this whole year.
Brad, is it fair to say that since you started working with Rory Bay Hill 2018 on the Monday of that week, is it fair to say you've reached a point in the relationship now where you're not actually doing much in terms of intense sessions, that it's more just little touch-ups here and there, occasional conversations that are even more about, kind of situational stuff that comes up on a golf course rather than technique?
Yeah, it's rare that I would get, a text of Rory at a tournament where I'm not there, a video maybe of his stroke. It doesn't feel good. There's the occasional text. And I think if I do my job well with Rory, he has to see me less, not more. In this model of coaching these days, you have a lot of players that like to have an instructor with them every step of the way out there, Monday through Wednesday before they go to play. Rory's not like that. And that was one thing I learned from Michael Bannon immediately, was that they like to do their work away from the tournaments, likes to give Rory 1 or 2 things to think about and let him go from there. You're right. I think it's more stuff we talk about having a cup of coffee or maybe in the gym or something like that. But there are times that this year at the Tour Championship, I hadn't seen Rory since the British Open, and we spent 45 minutes on that putting green, and it was more reminders of what he liked when he was doing well and kind of him telling me what feels good when he's playing well. And he's so good at talking about his sensations. Really, it's not thoughts, it's feels, sensations. And I think that's what some of the great players have when they're the most creative. And that's what we see with Rory when we see some of these great shots that he can hit.
Well, that touch-up at Eastlake certainly paid off that week to the tune of $18 million by Sunday night, Brad. When you look at Rory's putting statistics, just even taking strokes gained putting over the last few years, there have been some fluctuations, but he seems to have found a pretty comfortable plateau now in terms of where he is with his putting, safely inside the top 30 over the last couple of years. Is it accurate to say that he's not searching for anything anymore?
Well, that's a great word for it. And I think if you went back even before 2017-18 season, he was outside the top 150 for a couple of those years. And, Rory's too good to be that far out of the putting stuff. And A little bit of it was technical. Some of it was setup. A lot of it was more routine process. Reading greens is a part of it. When you don't feel comfortable, can you step away and get back in there? And those are the things that I think sometimes, having been a former player, helps to talk about. And then, I was nervous when I met Rory. I didn't want to mess him up. I wasn't as comfortable as I am now when I talk to him. And we don't really talk too much publicly about what we do together. And I think that's something I learned a long time ago that can sometimes add confusion when other people hear what you're doing. So I love when he says something. I love when he compliments the whole team. And, the modern day player talks about the team and way more than we used to when I was on the course. But I think this is just a sign of where he can be with his putter for long term. This isn't just a short term thing. He's comfortable. He doesn't search. You use that word. I think when players are struggling, they often change equipment. They'll change the head of the club, the grip of the club, the way they hold on to the club. They'll try so many different things. And Rory puts that head cover on his putter after the 18th hole, and he doesn't go to sleep worrying about what's going to happen with it the next day.
Brad, Padraig Harrington talks about the loss of innocence that a player goes through in his 30s, he or she in her 30s or 40s. When you see Rory at this point at 33, we posed the question on Golf Today, what is his next decade going to look like? Could it possibly look like his career did when he was winning majors 2011 to 2014? What do you think the next decade will look like for Rory McIlroy?
I'm really optimistic for him, Damon. I know that I can very rarely come up with a stat or a quote from somebody from the PGA Tour that he doesn't already know about. I mean, he knows everything about the history of the game, like, incredibly. And, I can find some motivating books or quotes to send him. But I think Rory, as fit as he is, he's not doing anything crazy in the gym that's going to hurt him. He's strong as anyone. He's still top 5 in driving distance. I just think it could be just the beginning for him.
How is your relationship different now than it was when you started, Brad? How is he different in terms of his approach to the game, if at all? But I'm curious how your relationship has changed, both in terms of how you get on personally and how you work together. Well,
he hits it 90 yards by me now, not 70. It's so sad. I feel like, I would be afraid sometimes to call him, to talk to him. I didn't want to bother him. And now I feel like our chats, whether it's across the ocean, whether it's for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, we can get pretty deep. We can talk about a lot of things to do with the game. I think he respects the fact that I played, that I was on the policy board, and I don't know. I just feel so honored. I feel like a lot of times the coach gets too much credit. I mean, he's #1 player in the world. I just kind of not got to get out of his way. But I feel like I have a great relationship with everybody on his team that he met, whether, Sean and Donal are his 2 agents, managers. I see his dad down here where we live quite a bit. So I think I'm comfortable around everyone, and that's made me feel pretty good. I think I helped with Bob Rotella to get him back in the situation with the team, and he's been very quietly helping Rory on and off the golf course.
I want to go back to the very first session you had with Rory. You once showed me a video of that day. I was out on the putting green at the Bears Club, and you set up Rory with about a 12-foot putt that had maybe 8 inches of right to left break, and you handed him a 5-wood to make 3 putts in a row, which he drained 3 of them in a row. What were you trying to teach him in that moment in your very first session together, or what were you trying to scrape away in terms of rust?
It's a great story, and there's so many more things to that. But when we walked out to the green, that was at the Bears Club. It was a month before the Masters, and Jack Nicklaus makes those greens so fast as players prep for the first major of the season. And it was so windy that day that when we got out there was nobody around. It was 4 o'clock or even after on that Monday afternoon. And Rory said, if you weren't here, there's no way I would be out on this putting green. And, I watched him hit some putts. I watched him move around. I kind of asked him to show me what he does in his routine. And it looked to me that it just looked a little bit stuck, a little bit wooden. Players talk about flow all the time when they get it going well, and Rory has that with his full swing. And I said, look, if you hit some putts with these other clubs, and it wasn't just a 5-wood, but it was a bladed sand wedge. We turned the toe of what was the putter he was using then around, so he was hitting it off the toe end of the putter. And then this 5-wood, he had just put in the bag as he was getting ready for Augusta. And he hit these 3 putts in a row, never having hit a shot with it, never mind a putt. And he made all 3 of them. And I made a fatal flaw as the cameraman when he made that last putt and it went in. I clicked the red button to stop the video because he turned around with the biggest smile in the world. And that would have been after about 45 minutes of being there with him. And I could see the light going off, and it was time to talk less and just watch. And I think from that moment, he's kind of understood, I need to get back to that point. And with great players, there's always that place where you want to be, and you go a little too far one direction, a little too far on the other, and it's always reining them back to get them in the middle. And I think right there, it's that steady drive that keeps going up, and there's always those little fluctuations above and below that line. But I love this great line. Let's keep the train heading north, and he's done a good job at doing that.
Yeah, 23 wins on the PGA Tour. And Brad, he may be hitting it 90 past you, but it looks like you're sitting on a weight bench. It must be shoulder day at the Faxon household. Yeah, here you go. Maybe you'll close that gap to 80. Thanks so much, buddy. We appreciate the time.
Damon, you see that big rack of putters back there? I'm still looking for my backup gamer, Eamon Lynch, out somewhere up there. He stole
Doesn't get
me.
much use. So.
I don't think he's going to get that back, Brad. Best of luck to you, buddy.
Thanks, you guys.